Okay, class, I want to just go over a couple of tips for you as you finish up your semester projects. This is based off of the few that have been submitted so far and some things I've seen in the past. So I have your assignment sheet up here for you so that you can be reminded of what you need to do. So if you haven't looked at this lately, you might want to do that before you finish it up. I want to focus in on how you're asking questions and then translating that into the project. Right? Because you were to develop a research question and then come up with some sub-questions that can be asked. And that can be really tricky to then convert those questions into a written paper. Now, don't worry, I'm not asking you to redo everything you've already done, but there's some really simple things that will make your writing stronger and some misconceptions of how these sub-questions and questions should be used in your paper. So let's take a quick look at this. The idea here is that you don't actually use your questions in the paper. Those are used to guide your research. So your question turns into a hypothesis, right, in scientific literature, but you don't write those out in that format for your paper. So what do you do with it? So your overarching question should become your title. So from my example that I provided you in the assignment sheet, this was a potential overarching question. How would lynx be affected by patch cuts of beetle-killed lodgepole pine in northern Colorado? Now, I don't want a question to be my title, so I need to turn this question into a statement to be my title. And that might look something like this. The impacts of patch cuts in lodgepole pine on lynx. And you know what, I should actually say in Colorado, right? The impacts of patch cuts and lodgepole pine on lynx in Colorado. That's a title. I can read that title and know what that paper is going to be about. Similarly, what do you do with your sub-questions? Your sub-questions should become your section headings, but they shouldn't be written in question format. So if this was one of my sub-questions, what forest types are lynx using in Colorado? I could turn that into a statement by just saying, forest types used by lynx in Colorado. And then my section there is basically answering that sub-question, but it's just providing information. Like the answer comes from the research that you're doing. So then you're then telling the reader, look, here are the different forest types that lynx use in Colorado. And that may be different than what forests lynx are using in the boreal forest of Canada. And that's why that's relevant to this paper. Okay, if your sub-question was, do lynx avoid any structure types of different forests? That was one of my sub-questions on the assignment sheet. So how could you turn that into a heading? Well, it might be like this. Habitat selection response to different forest structures. Or habitat selection response by lynx to different forest structures. You might have to keep working at it a little bit. You have a sub-question, how do lynx respond to patch cuts in other forest types? Your section heading might be lynx habitat utilization response to forest management activities, right? So you turn your questions into statements and make those statements be your headings for your paper. Okay, the other thing that I see a lot where these questions come back up, what I have here at the top of this introduction is just straight from your assignment sheet, right? What should be included. So your section should explain, in the introduction, should explain the essential question that you are asking and the justification for why you think that is an important question to be answered. Okay, so what I see a lot is people kind of then writing out the question. So down here in red, I have, I wanted to answer the question, how would lynx be affected by patch cuts of beetle-killed lodgepole pine in northern Colorado? Instead of that, a summary statement maybe at the end of where you start introducing that lynx have been reintroduced in Colorado, that mountain pine beetle has come in and changed the way our forests look and has changed the way that we manage our forest and the work that's being done in them, right? That's setting your relevance up. That's explaining to your reader of here's why that title that you read at the top is going to be important. And at the end of that, it might be, as the U.S. Forest Service uses patch cuts to remove standing dead trees post-pine beetle epidemic, it is important for wildlife managers to understand how this management strategy will impact habitat utilization of these forests by the reintroduced population of lynx in Colorado. Period. Do you see how that little summary provides relevance? You've already given some background, hopefully above this statement in your introduction, and then this summarizes it. I don't need to restate a question. I don't need to rewrite the title. I need to process it and put it into a readable format that explains why this paper should be read, why this paper was ever written. Okay, and the second part of that introduction piece, it says it should give an outline of what you will discuss in your review. Okay, this is your thesis. It's not a list of your sub-questions. So don't just go, in this paper, I will answer the following questions, and then list out all 3 to 5 questions that you wrote. That doesn't read well. Have you ever read a scientific paper where they just list out a whole bunch of questions? No. I doubt you have, at least not one that got published in a reputable journal. Instead, put it into a thesis. So this, in order to understand how lynx will be impacted by forest management activities, this paper will look at current habitat use by lynx in Colorado, preferences for certain forest structures, and the response by lynx to similar forest practices in other geographic locations. There's my summary. Now I know moving forward that I probably have 3 sections to this paper, one on each of these little topics that I have in my thesis. Okay, a couple other general comments, and I've thought of more as we started here. Order your sections in the most logical flow, even if that's not how you came up with the question. Some of the papers I'm reading, it seems like the sections don't provide the background they need before the next section. So really step back and analyze your order, outline your stuff. And it might just be a matter of cutting and pasting the sections after you have them written into a different order. A lot of concern on the in-text citations, folks, so I have a couple videos for you on how to do that and resources that do it for you, so please watch those videos and try to use correct in-text citations. You should be using APA or Chicago author date style. What that looks like is it'll say like Smith, 1989, in parentheses after the statement. Again, I already have videos out there for you on that, so please relook at those. And then have the correct format for literature cited section. This is what it looks like. You have a reference section. I don't care if it says references, works cited, lit cited. I don't care. But I do care about this, that you have this reverse indentation style where the first line of each citation is left justified and each subsequent line is indented, and that it's following the APA or Chicago author date style. And this is what that would look like. This website, OWL, Purdue, it's like online reading lab or online writing lab, I think, from Purdue. This is the go-to source for how to write. So check out this website. It gives you examples, it gives you formats, it gives you links, it gives you everything you need to know on how to write papers, how to do citations, and how to write references. So check that out. The last comment I want to make is do not, and I don't have a slide for this, I'm going to add it before I upload it. Do not use any quotations in your paper. You need to summarize the literature. That means put it in your own words. Think about what their main ideas are, and then put it in your own words, and then give them credit for that thought behind the statement. All right, so that might be lynx avoided forest structures where trees were between 6 feet tall and 20 feet tall. Smith, 1989, period. Now, you didn't discover that lynx avoided those forest types. Smith did. So you have to give Smith credit for that. All right. So don't use any quotes. Quotes is really poor writing in scientific literature. The only time you should ever use quotes is when you can't convey the same message with the same meaning, with the same impact. That's the only, by summarizing it. So if you can't summarize it and keep the impact, that's when you would use a quote, but you really don't need to do that in scientific writing. So for our purposes, for this paper, convert all of those quotes to summaries. I don't want to see any quote marks showing up in your papers. Okay, If you're struggling, as always, reach out and talk to me. I'd be happy to walk you through how to get your paper polished up and nice. Good luck.